Jamie Robinson, and I'm the Director of Community Relations and Communications for the Rapid Transit Project for Metrolinx. On behalf of Metrolinx, I'd like to welcome everyone here this evening who are viewing also online to our third Management Town Hall. It's my pleasure to be the moderator for this evening's event. Metrolinx is committed to engaging with and informing our neighbors. Sorry, I think you're unmuted. Better? Thank you. Do I have to start all again? No, there we go. All right.
Jamie,
my name is Jamie Robinson. Welcome everyone here this evening.
I can just say you sound better when you mute it.
Not sure how we're going to respond to that, but we're all open to shots here. That's good. Anyways, thank you very much for coming this evening. We're committed to engaging with our customers, with our neighbors in the community about the progress as we move forward to plan, build, and operate the region's transportation network. We invite all your feedback about our services and our products and our projects, and I want to thank you for your interest in joining us here this evening. Before we begin, I'd like to talk about safety, so I'm going to bring this up on the screen, if we can see it. Maybe not? Peter? Okay. Who can read that?
So could we get that?
A little bit of a technical difficulty. Yeah, can we get the screen up? Yeah.
It's on the back, at the back.
Okay. Okay, that's much better. So safety is a priority at Metrolinx, and at the begin every meeting we talk about safety. So we're going to run through a series of questions here that we're going to collectively answer as a group. So if we, who's going to call 911 in the event of something? Helen will do that. Who's the designated first aider? Raj? Thank you. Where's the first aid kit located?
In the kitchen.
In the kitchen, thank you very much. And where's the nearest fire extinguisher? Kitchen as well. And what about the AED located? Where's that? Kitchen? Everything's in the kitchen. Everyone knows where the kitchen is, hopefully, along with the pizza. Who will escort the emergency services first responder? Mary, thank you very much. What does the emergency alarm sound like? Greg, you're great at that. Do you want to give us the...
So if it's a warning, it's a slow bell, and the PA announcement will come across saying that. If it's a fast bell, you move.
Great, thank you. Where's the nearest evacuation?
Some fire alarms like this, some like this.
Okay, thank you.
That's, sir, that's fantastic. Much better than Mr. Percy.
I'm just doing a demonstration while a fire alarm might sound like in buildings. So it's just a demonstration.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Where's the emergency evacuation route or nearest exit? Raj, do you want to show us where that is?
It's actually through this door here and to your left, and there's a stairwell on your right.
And what about the designated assembly area?
It's by Kelly's Landing on the southwest corner, opposite our building.
Great. And Peter, do you have a head count for me tonight?
I'll get it for you right now.
Okay, good. Thanks very much. So the format has been designed to allow for as many opportunities for questions as possible. Those who are not able to join us here this evening were able to submit their questions in advance online and to help us prioritize to what we come up with our top 10 questions. For those in the room, we've got a microphone over here, and so invite folks, if they want to ask a question, they can begin to line up here, and we'll take those questions in order as well. For those of you who are viewing online, the moderators are going to take questions and project them onto the screen as well. We're going to rotate through the three types of questions that we've got. So we've got online questions, we've got top 10 questions, and we've got questions from the audience in the room. So we're going to do typically a couple of questions from the online community and a couple of questions from the room, and we're going to go back and forth on that as much as possible. We've got overall 90 minutes for this event. If we don't get a chance to answer all the questions, don't worry about it. Keep sending them in. We have made a commitment. We're going to answer those within a couple of weeks and put those answers up on our website. So we're going to take as many questions as possible, but we're going to go from there. We've also heard very clearly from folks last time that some of our senior management here, while they give terrific answers, sometimes they're a little long-winded. So I'm going to be a little bit more draconian tonight and cut them off at call it 3 minutes. So this is more question period and answer period. We want to get through as many questions as possible. Phil, I'm going to turn it over to you right now if you'd like to introduce the panel.
Yeah, so just say once again, this is our third Ask Metrolinx session. The whole purpose of these sessions are you have access to our Metrolinx SMT team, senior management team, Spirit of transparency, we'll answer questions straight up and tell you where we are. And if we can't answer the question because the question is just something we are not yet fully with a full position on, we'll say so. And we'll be really clear about what our position is, and that's the commitment we give from these sessions. So just from my side, thank you very much to everyone that's here tonight, everyone that's online. It is very, very important for us to turn Ask Metrolinx into something that helps the communities to understand what it is we do and how we do it. On our panel, and we've got our whole senior management team is here, but most of the questions, typically Peter Zook, who deals with our capital programs. So Peter will deal with any issues on capital programs. Erin Moroz will deal with issues around planning and our interface with the City of Toronto. Greg over here, Greg Percy, is our Chief Operations Officer, and so Greg would deal with anything operational, and anyone else in the team would fill in the gaps as and when we get questions that are outside of what the four of us would be answering. So again, thank you very much for being here, and great to have you.
Great, thank you. We're going to turn to the first couple of questions on the line, so if we could bring up the questions here. Great, thank you. And before one more thing, before we continue, we do have our translation specialist here in the room, so if anyone would like to ask a question en français, we can certainly accommodate that, so thank you very much. So top 10 question, please update us on prospects for true TTC Go fare integration. A single fare for any transit option, Go TTC Up Express, within the 416 would go a long way to improving transit usage within Toronto. The current mix of fares, even with a TTC discount, is an impediment to transit use. This is coming from John M.
Yeah, so Erin and myself will respond to that. So I'll take a first sort of general view, and then Erin may respond to some of the detail that sits in that question. So very definitely, fare integration has a big benefit for footfall. It's part of our business strategy to broaden the fare integration across the GTHA area. And the business benefits of that is exactly as the questioner is proposing it. And it will definitely improve transit usage. There's a process that we have to follow to get everyone onto the same page and to deal with the cost of fare integration. Because fare integration in effect means that we want to create that fare structure that allows fares to be charged differently, to be fully integrated, to have all of the software systems sit behind the fare management system that will make sure that whatever fares are collected are then allocated, cross-allocated to the different transit operators that are operating the different services. So there's a structural component whereby we need to be able to allocate the fares we collect. There are decisions about what different product offerings, discounts are offered by the different train operators. How do we harmonize them all? How do we make it all sensible? So what we have implemented now, and you would have seen that in the budget, recent budget, is a fare proposal which gives anyone traveling from the 905 directly onto a TTC service, 50% discount, very similar and exactly the same as the fare, co-fare or discount double fare solution that was implemented in January between Go and TTC. Then there's a further, and because we've got only 3 minutes, I can't explain all of it in that level of detail, but I just want to say, direct you to what we've publicly said on the Go fares. But on Go, that we are also taking the process forward to reduce our base fare from the $4.70 to $3, which would mean that everyone in the Toronto city boundaries would pay on Go the same that they pay on the TTC, and that's $3 when using a Presto card. But more than that, we will have $3 as a base fare for anyone joining anywhere on the Go system and traveling for 10 kilometers up to 10 kilometers, and from there on it'll be fare by distance to the next station and the stations thereafter. So that's the concept which we are busy implementing and which we'll give more information on in the months to come. The purpose of that, just to be really clear, is exactly in line with, again, what the questioner, John, intended, is that by reducing the base rate of the GO fares, we stimulate more movement across the network between individual stations rather than just an inflow into the city in the morning and an outflow in the evening. So it's all good news for passengers. Erin, did you want to add something to that?
I'll add something very quickly, I think, by Mr. Robinson. I would say it's a very exciting time in terms of fares and some of the partnerships that are underway in the region. We brought forward to our board a report that looked at strategies to get us to an integrated fare system, and what Phil has just described is us actually taking action on 2 out of those 3 strategies. And so we'll continue to move that forward in partnership with our communities, but I think it's really a balance between making progress and also balancing local knowledge of local transit authorities in terms of their communities and the fare structure that helps move people around the region.
Great. Thank you, Phil, and thank you, Erin. Next question, please. So this is a question coming regarding the Stouffville corridor. Will the present 34 trains be capped? So the Minister of Transportation has recognized the important safety and noise issues with Metrolinx trains in residential areas by capping the number of trains on the Barrie corridor at the current level of 39. Twice a day on weekdays, Agincourt residents have children crossing the tracks on foot, bicycles and school buses to attend 7 schools. Agincourt too experiences safety issues and suffers from diesel train noise. Will Metrolinx or the Minister of Transportation cap the number of trains on the Stouffville corridor to the current level of 34 unless proper infrastructure is in place? This is coming from eConnect.
I'll take that. I think I would start, that's a really good question, and I know the community has been really involved to date in the planned changes that are going to come through Agincourt, and specifically around safety concerns, crossings, and that there is a local team that is working directly with them to address some of these issues. And I think Phil was out there recently himself to look at the crossings and what might be needed as we increase rail service through that area. What I can offer is that there are currently no plans to cap anything on the Stouffville corridor. Barrie and Barrie specifically, what we're speaking about is the Davenport Overpass project. That is a very specific project where a cap was put in place around the infrastructure that's needed, and the cap in trains had to do with the noise walls that are going into place. So I would say there's no current plans, and we will continue to work with the community around those crossings and making them as safe as possible.
What we can say as well, Jamie, is that whenever we increase services on a corridor, if there are restrictions that we think are necessary to ensure safety, we'll apply those. And as Erin said, the restrictions on the Barrie corridor, which I think is not 39, but 36 or something like that, was implemented for a specific reason, and that was for the noise mitigation measures. So want to give the questioner that sense of comfort that when we increase services, we take a very careful view on what the safety implications are on level crossings and the like, which the question expresses a concern about.
Great. Thanks, Phil. Thanks, Erin. Invite the first question from the audience. Could state your name and perhaps if you're affiliated with a particular group or just where you're from.
Hi, my name is Nina. I represent the Lakeshore East Corridor, or at least a portion of it, Old Riverdale specifically. I would like to, in the spirit of transparency, I would ask that Metrolinx, the Ministry of Transportation, and the Ministry of the Environment release the information related to the RFP and RFQ to make it online so all other community advisory groups that for the residents that live along the corridor can see what it is what language you guys are using on these contracts, so then that way when we're working toward making changes for our specific corridor sections, that we can make them in time before the fall submissions.
That's reasonable. Which RFQs and RFPs do you refer to specifically?
The ones pertaining to noise and vibration mitigation.
So I'm under the impression that these are in the public domain already.
I haven't been able to find them, so if somebody on your team could show me where on the website,
Most
I'd be
definitely.
happy to
Most
look.
definitely. Just check. They are in the public domain. So they would be, because that's how we go out to market, and our procurement's public. So we'll definitely help you with that.
Okay, because I checked online, there was an RFP website, but you need to have access in order to be able to open those documents. I don't know if it's the same link. Could be a different website.
Oh, we definitely want to learn from that experience as well. Lena, can I ask?
I was going to say, Raj, just gentleman over here, if you want to go see this gentleman over here, he's going to put up his hand. Just give him your name and all your contact details, and we'll get that for you.
Okay, great.
Great, thank you.
But thanks for the question. That's a very reasonable request.
Sir, next question is for you. Please state your name for us.
Yeah, hi, I'm Fernando. I don't have a question. I have more of a suggestion to encourage more bike riders on the system. I ride my bike to my local station in the summer, and I would like to bring it downtown, but it's really not practical to bring bikes on the train. What I've seen in Europe is you'll have one dedicated car that has no seats on it whatsoever and has bike racks. So you could have a whole car full of people bringing their bikes on. You lock it into a stand and you stand next to your bike. Just in the future, something to think about to encourage more cyclists. The second thing that makes cycling, bringing your bike, impractical is when you arrive at Union Station, it's difficult to carry your bike down the stairs or wait for an elevator. On the east end of the platform, I know you're going to be doing more construction there. Possibly you guys could make ramps that go down to street level from every track, then cyclists en masse could quickly get down to street level instead of having to go through Union Station itself. So just my suggestions on something to encourage bike riders in the future.
Yes, thank you very much for that. That is much appreciated. This stays a challenge across many railways in terms of how to deal with bicycles. And I think the examples you refer to where there is an extra vehicle, it's very often where there are particular markets such as very rarely commuter markets that would have an extra vehicle on, because any capacity we have for commuter trains are typically used for seating and for moving people. But markets that do provide an extra vehicle for bicycles and I had a route like that in Scotland where we had lots of off-road cycling in the Fort William area, and we had considered the option but never got to the stage where it was economically feasible to implement this. But we'll take your thought away, because there stays a challenge how to get active travel options such as cycling to actually be supportive. And then the trade-off is to figure out to what extent we should have sort of that first mile for your bicycle, and then when you get to destination, are there other options for you to follow? We're very reluctant to put bicycles on the trains at the peak, as you can imagine, because it's just lost capacity. So it stays a conundrum to think about, and I don't think there's an easy solution to that. But we'll take that away. Thank you very much.
Greg, you look like you're itching to sort of...
Yeah, I'm itching. So to Phil's point on the commuter service, it's tough to mix bikes and people when the trains are as crowded as they are, because we actually do get complaints about grease and torn pants and so forth. But also to Phil's point, on our Niagara service, we actually have 4 bi-level coaches, the main floor of which are only bike racks, so people can stay up top and have their bikes below. So we use those because that's a very bike-intensive corridor into Niagara and Niagara and the Lake area. So that seems to work quite well. And if demand goes up, we'll get some more of those.
Great.
Can I just also share with you what happens in a lot of places in Europe, which you didn't refer to, is people have 2 bicycles. So they've got one that they travel from home to station, and they've got one at Union Station, which they then have big enclosed spaces where bicycles are locked up, which they pick up over here and travel in, and becomes 2 bicycles. Now then, if you don't expect that they're all some of these really expensive bicycles, but there are bicycles like that. So there are different choices that you can exercise in different cities, and different railways encourage people to make different choices. But that would be an example for commuters, for example. Fact is, we need to do more thinking about cyclists. I see too few cycling options at our stations, and we need to think about that. So your point's very apt. Thank you very much.
You have an opportunity now where you're going to be doing some construction on the east side. I think you're going to cover it with green space or something. If you could make ramps that go down the street level, then what few bikes you have can just quickly go down to street level and not have to go through the station. So
yeah, and so if you really pursue active traveling solutions to the full extent, then it's even more further than what you've said, is we should sort of work closely with municipalities and make sure there are cycleways that gets people from neighborhoods to the station itself. Your off-ramp idea is also a good one, so thanks for that.
Thanks very much for that. We're going to take more questions from the online community. You bring that up. So this is coming from our live stream. So will Presto mobile app tap be introduced to iPhones as well? This is coming from Jerry. And Annalise is going to answer this. She's the EVP of Presto.
Thanks, Jimmy. It's a great question, and the answer is we hope so, but it's not on the roadmap today. And the main reason is that Apple currently doesn't support that functionality. We have put the call out to the ether to ask for Apple to take interest, and as we know, they tend to work in their own ecosystem in a slightly different way than many other technology providers do, by kind of controlling more parts of the value chain. So right now they don't support an XP mobile functionality, which is why we're going first to Android and then hopefully add Apple when the time comes.
Just to add to that for Jerry and the questioner specifically, is to say, while we demonstrated what's possible with Presto Mobile Tap, that's not a product yet, and we haven't got a rollout program for that yet, but we are thinking very carefully about that, and this is us envisaging what the future could look like. And there's still quite a lot of commercial stuff that Annalise and myself will be doing with the different suppliers to actually make this possible and feasible in the long run. But I'm glad to see people have registered that we have a Presto mobile app, a Presto mobile tap solution, which we are considering. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Can we bring up another question from online? So this is our third top 10 question, and it's pertaining to the Eglinton Crosstown LRT project. So why will the Crosstown LRT not have enclosed shelters? So in recent years, there have been many complaints about some of the TTC's traditional four-wall shelters being replaced with one-wall shelters, as protection from wind and precipitation is minimal. I was surprised to learn that similar shelters will only have one complete wall, will be used on the surface stops of the Crosstown LRT. Other surface rapid transit projects in the region, including the comparable Waterloo Ion LRT, as well as the Mississauga Transitway and Viva Rapidways, all have enclosed waiting areas. Is it not possible to provide maximum protection from the elements for future transit riders, making transit a more attractive option? This is from Anonymous.
Well, to Anonymous, it is possible, and we are trying to provide the maximum protection to our customers, and it is not the case that there will be one-sided protection on Eglinton Crosstown. There will be three-sided protection with a roof on it. We need to keep another space open so that accessibility for customers that require accessibility can be maintained, as well as work within the available space that we have. So it is not the case that we will be not providing a shelter which protects our customers from the elements, and these units on Eglinton Crosstown will fully protect our customers.
Thanks, Peter. Question from the audience. Sir.
Yes, hi. My name is Brian Connolly, and I'm with the ATU Canada Keep Transit Public Committee. And my question is for the Metrolinx board. I'd like to know who makes the decision for Metrolinx to authorize the use of Infrastructure Ontario AFP process, which is the P3 model, of design, build, finance, maintain, and operate, and design, build, finance, and maintain of transit infrastructures in Ontario, including the LRTs in Waterloo, Hamilton, here Ontario, Brampton, and in Toronto, the Finch West, and the Eglinton Crosstown. Especially in light of the Metrolinx project failures of P3s of Presto that do not meet service requirements, have cost millions of dollars more to implement. Also, the Pickering Go Bridge that was 2.5 years overdue and cost millions of dollars more to construct, and it's still not finished constructed. And also the Union Pearson Express, where SNC Lavalin walked away from the project after it was constructed. So we also have corporate collapses like Carillion and Capita. So where is the accountability to the public, seeing that city councilors were removed from the board years ago, and who makes these decisions? Is it Metrolinx or is it the government to use Infrastructure Ontario's AFP process?
Right, thanks.
Brian, it would be great if you could just stay there, because that was such a long question.
No problem.
I just want to make sure I catch everything.
Sure, no problem.
So it's a great question. So I'll start over here. Your first question is, who instructs us to do that? Well, the instruction comes from the ministry to ourselves to proceed to procure AFP contracts or P3 contracts because of the reasoning why P3 contracts are more effective. So I'm going to explain why P3 contracts are more effective. I'd like to start off with the examples you mentioned about P3s that have been wrong. I just want to point you to the fact that none of the examples you've given were actually P3s. Do you understand that? So Presto was not a P3 contract. Yeah?
P3 is a privatization of fare collection.
No, it's not. So let me just take what P3s are. P3 is a public-private partnership whereby the responsibility to operate a system or solution is in effect shared in a commercial deal with a private industry, and where they then over a period of time get investment of equity and long-term debt in the form of bondholders, and over a 30-year period run that operation and that asset. That's what the P3 is. What Presto was, or anything else, and the Pickering Bridge is an example of what's called a design-build contract. That's your second example, is also not a P3. So just be really clear, these aren't P3s, because P3s are very different mechanisms than the examples you've referred to. If you take what we have at Pickering, which is a design-build, is something where we have a supplier that just supplies you. Presto is the same. It's a contract we run, but it's a supplier that delivers something, and suppliers are used in all of, every railway I've worked in, you've used suppliers, and I think every railway out there has suppliers. So I think that's a different type of thing. However, let's not focus just on your examples, because it's okay, the examples aren't exactly right. Let's focus on why you asked the question, which is really important. And I understand the debate and understand the different points of view on should you do P3s or should you not do P3s. And that's not an easy argument, because part of the discussion on should you do P3s, should not do P3s is a sort of a political orientation rather than a actual how do you deliver it orientation. And I understand where you guys come from, ATU come from, and I can see, Keep Transit Public, there's a lot of content in that statement of yours, and I can understand why the ATU has that view, or why you propagate that view. So I'll give you an answer about the practicalities of design-build contracts and P3 contracts. And some of the practicalities of that will explain to you just the cold clinical reasoning of why AFPs stroke P3s are popular. And the reason for it is that mechanism I explained in terms of the financing structure. So when you go to the market and you have a design-build contract, you're typically in this situation where quite a lot of the risk of the contract sits with the transit agency. So we must make sure the design gets up to a certain point, then we let it out to a contractor. The contractor comes and do a design build contract. If they fail to deliver on time or to program, there's normally a risk share mechanism, either explicitly or implicitly, in terms of what risks are borne by the transit operator, meaning ourselves, and what are borne by the contractor itself. And in large complex contracts across the world, and this is not just an opinion, this is not an Ontario thing, this is just fact. Large contracts throughout the world, complex transit contracts, when you do it as a design build, your knowledge and skills that you need within the Metrolinxes of that organization or transit organizations need to be exponentially bigger than what we've got. And because these builds happen so seldom, like you look at what we're doing on RER and the LRTs, we don't have knowledge in how people bore tunnels or how they put signaling systems in, brand new signaling systems, new technology, latest technology signaling systems. That's not a natural, specialized competence that we have. But what we do have is we have a responsibility to understand what customers want. So the larger the contracts become, the less feasible it becomes to do these as design build. And track record throughout the world is when you do complex programs as design build, just utilities, transit organizations such as Metrolinx, then very often have delays in contract delivery and overshoots in contract cost. So a very practical thing to do is to say, when the contract gets to be really big, what you do is you parcel it up as one package and you put all of that risk towards the supply chain. And you say to the supply chain, I want you to deliver me the solution that meets these output requirements, but in order to make sure that you do it right, you are also for 30 years going to be on the hook to operate it properly thereafter. So the reasons for going for P3 contracts are very clinically about when you do that, your programs are typically closer to budget, hit budget much better, and typically hit your program for implementation much better. The issue is not politics. It's nothing about that. It's just pure fact in terms of delivery of complex programs is better when you bundle it up together. And if I just close off by saying why it's better, it is that thing that I said that you ask the parties to actually build a financial structure, which they do through a special purpose vehicle called Project Co, where they get equity investment, so from pension funds and the like, say, I'll put money in here, bondholders who lend money, put money into the contract, and they then say to the contractor, I now want to see that you are really going to deliver on time. And they put them through risk management procedures, which are very rigorous, and that influence of the bondholders actually creates the discipline that makes sure that the contract delivery is better. Because if it's not, the contractor has huge balance sheet exposures, which means if they don't deliver, the contractor goes bust. And so it's really important to just make that distinction. The reason why we do P3s is just more effective. So I'm sorry it's a long answer, but I thought I owe you a long answer because I can see you guys have come as a big team, and I think it's fair to give you that.
So Phil, is your ownership still public then? Who owns it?
Oh, this is a really important point, yes. So you need to look at everything around a P3 as sort of the delivery of the solution. But the ownership is still public.
So who's accountable?
So we're accountable.
So if you're inaccessible except for once every 3 months, how are you acceptable?
Say that again, Brian?
If you're inaccessible because your board meetings are closed every month, how are you accountable?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. I'm accountable. Can I answer the question as I
Sorry,
see?
what I'm saying is the public cannot, obviously they can't go to their city councillor because it's not a city councillor problem. You didn't mention Union Pearson Express when SNC Lavalin walked away from the project.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know about that.
That was a privatized adventure. You didn't mention that the Finch West LRT RFP was just announced 2 weeks ago, and now last week it was announced that the project's going to be 1 year delayed. And the
No, 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 hang on. Let me hang on.
Just
Hang on,
one more thing.
Okay, yeah.
The Auditor General in 2014 also disputed your fact on P3s, saying that P3s cost the taxpayer $8.1 billion more than if it was delivered by the public sector. So why is the Auditor General disagreeing with you?
Yeah, so I'll take it from the back. Yeah, I can't. I've seen the Auditor General's comments. There's a difference of opinion. I don't know where the Auditor General's facts come from, but I think it's fairly well established when you look at every possible study out there that P3s are much better in terms of cost delivery, much better in terms of schedule delivery, and I just don't know why the Auditor General had a different view, and it is what it is. Mm-hmm. People have different views. In terms of Finch, the declared date for trying to complete Finch and the date the markets have come back with and said this is what we can do is not an indictment of the AFP process. It just is what it is. You are always, when you're going to tender work, if it's a P3 or a design build or any other way, when you 3-4 years ago, remember Finch, the completion date of Finch was declared a couple of years ago. It's done with an intent to get the job done at a certain point in time. But then when you go to market and you get these bidders to tender, depending on how busy the market is, depending on what other contracts there are, the time of completion is very much a product of someone coming out and saying, look, if I want to build it competitively and I've looked at how it fits, this is how quickly I can build it. So it doesn't mean P3 contracts have given a year delay. The time to complete this is a year later.
Doesn't that defeat your argument then by public sector delivering it and being delayed compared to the private sector? It's the same thing.
No. Delay that I referred to earlier is not a later date for completion bid by the market. It's a delay during contract, after the contract's been let. Finch have not been let yet. You follow? But can I come back to the public transit?
Yeah.
Just this last one, because we're going to...
Yeah. Sorry, but look, just do justice to the rest of the team that are here, and I'm sure everyone's concerned about this question. In the end, we own whatever a P3 contractor delivers. We must make sure they manage their contract and that we contract manage them and that they deliver what they promised. We must make sure the assets stay in good condition. So we must make sure they deliver what is good for our customers and that they keep that asset in good nick. Because after 30 years, that asset is back to us and we can decide how to operate from there onwards.
So the customer, who do they complain to then if it's just the board and the board meetings are closed every month once you get these projects up and running and they're not meeting our operational targets, they're not safe, or whatever the case may be? The public itself, who do they complain to? Their city councillor?
It's the same as what we have on our GO operations, Brian. Same, fair question. It's the same as we have on the GO operations today. The GO operations today, we have got customer care services. We collect information from customers. We do customer surveys, customer satisfaction, action plans. Customers talk to us not every 3 months, talk to us every day. So that doesn't change.
So, Phil, let me just add something. We are the public sector, and we work shoulder to shoulder with your members on AFP projects. And the fact of the matter is we need to build a lot of things. And we're able to build more things using AFP projects. So your members are working shoulder to shoulder with us in putting out those jobs and in delivering those jobs. So we are the public. We're accountable every day. And it isn't, our meetings aren't closed. Our meetings are open to you. And, you know, we appreciate the contribution that you and your members have made to our public transportation system.
Thanks very much. For those of you who are watching this online through live stream, who are watching the discussion between Brian and Phil, my name is Jamie Robinson, and what we're in the midst of is at Metrolinx Management Town Hall. So we're about a little more than a third of the way through our 90-minute program. So we've got to take another question here from the audience.
Hi, my name's Stefan. I don't represent a big group, but I would represent probably the Go Bus community, since I don't know anything about trains other than the odd time I might come to Union, but I take the Go Bus every day to McMaster for context. I was trying to think of a good question for the past couple days of trying to ask you guys. And a few days ago, I happened to stumble upon a man who couldn't speak English who was trying to get from Waterloo to Aldershot GO station, and that got me thinking. Basically, for the GO bus community, although Hamilton and Kitchener are very large cities, there's no real GO bus connection between both those cities, and it's not so much of a question, but more of a comment, where Waterloo, Kitchener, Cambridge, Guelph, that I think it's called a Tri-City area. I think, yeah, the entire Tri-City area. As far as I know, there's no public transportation directly over there. Like usually when I have to go visit my girlfriend in Waterloo, I have to transfer at Bramalea or even Square One sometimes. Or sometimes I get lucky and I catch the Coach Canada that runs every 2 hours from McMaster. My point is really there should be some sort of connection that connects those very far 2 points, because my transfer, if you type onto Google Hamilton to Waterloo, for instance, you get a big V going to Bramalea, for instance. So those are more comments rather than questions. My quick question would be: are there any plans for new GO bus service somewhere? Because I've been looking online and I only see what the MTO puts out publicly. So I wonder, is there any new route coming about or any new areas going to be serviced?
Rick Percy?
So I can answer that one. We continually look at bus routes for GO. We do it to make sure there's proper ridership density, because we run this as a business, but we need to have a certain ridership to justify adding new routes and adding buses to existing routes. So we're looking at them all the time. We actually do introduce new GO bus service probably 3 times a year, different places based on market supply demand. And that particular case we've looked at before, bus routes that would pick up in some of the areas that you spoke of. And we didn't have the density to justify a GO bus there. Now that changes over time, so we don't just say, here's a decision, that's it for the next 10 years. We go back and revisit. So happy to continue doing that, and if there's a justification, we'll do it. We also run a network, and that's really an interesting thing to try to understand, is we don't run a series of routes. We have 2,500 bus routes per day across our network, but to make actually sense out of it, you actually link them and you cycle the buses and you cycle the drivers to be efficient. So if there's a certain corridor for me to be that may make sense, we try to link that to B and C as well, because that's how you run an efficient bus network. So we'll keep looking, so don't give up on us.
Do you have any future plans anywhere?
We have lots of future plans, but I won't get into those specific ones right now, but please, it'll be on our website, so go there first.
Yeah. Okay. Can I just make one last comment? Is that okay?
Quickly.
Yeah, sure. Just a keep transit public option just got me thinking. I happened to stumble upon a article about rail privatization in Argentina in the 1990s, and that's become a complete disaster for the rail network over there. So if you guys have time tonight, look over rail privatization in Argentina, because it's a good example of the worst case scenario with rail privatization. So, yep.
Thank you very much, Stefan. Much appreciated.
Great. Thanks very much. I'm going to take a question from our live stream coming here. This is coming from Ingrid Barrett. Will there be compensation for the business on Eglinton West that have lost? Will there be compensation for the businesses on Eglinton West that have lost business or have had to close as a result of the construction? I can do that.
We took a vote, Jamie, and you're it. So.
Okay, perfect.
Jamie.
Really simply, there is no direct compensation for businesses that are impacted by our construction, despite their proximity to our construction activities. That's sort of a policy and a procedure that is not unlike any other sort of large infrastructure project anywhere in the City of Toronto. So again, we don't compensate businesses or provide tax breaks to businesses that may have lost business. But what we do have in place is a couple of things at Metrolinx. We've got a very strong business support program that we work through the local business improvement areas to help market businesses along Eglinton in general. Working very closely, there was an announcement a couple of weeks ago that we did with the Mayor of the City of Toronto and the local councillor, Councillor Cole, where we looked at a series of provisions in terms of offset parking and doing things to again support businesses. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is help people understand that despite the fact that there's a tremendous amount of construction going along 19 kilometers in the city of Toronto, that all these businesses that are there really deserve support, and so we encourage people to shop locally wherever possible. So that's a very, very good question, and we regret we're having a large impact on businesses, but we're continuing to work to support them during construction.
Jamie, you guys have, as the community sort of liaison officers, have taken great care to where some of the say sidewalks were encroached upon, come up with practical arrangements to make sure customers can get to those businesses as well. And you've had those types of conversations as well, didn't you?
Correct. We're working with folks all the time, you know, making sure the streets are as clean as possible, that the wayfinding and signage of the particular businesses, so business may be behind a particular fence, so we make sure that there's lots of visibility as much as possible during that construction.
I think it's important to say as well as what we're doing is no different to what everyone else is doing in the city. So
yeah, and recognize that, in fact, I would say that along the Eglinton Crosstown, we're doing a heck of a lot more than a lot of other organizations, so we're going to continue to improve.
Thanks, Jamie.
Sir.
Hi there. I just want to know about something. I just was talking about those single ride vending machines or those fares and transfer machines on the new streetcars. Most recently, I'm starting to see in the 4x7s, they have a different kind of vending machine. It's a big red box instead of the gray boxes, and I'm hearing complaints is that they cannot use their credit debit cards on these different kind of machines. There's no notice. I don't even see it on the TDC.ca. I haven't heard anything through the media like CB24 or Global News about if they're going to be changing these to the red ones or not. I'm not sure why they're switching over to the big red boxes. That's what I saw on the 4x7s range, because most of them take credit debit cards too, not just coins or tokens. But the red ones, someone told me it's just strictly coins or tokens. And that's one question I'd like to ask Metrolinx. Who owns these machines? Are they TDC or Presto? Because I was on getpress.to. It's www.getpress.to. Under Presto devices and how to use them, it says the fares and transfer machines on new streetcars are Presto devices. Why are they listed? Why is it listed there if it's the TDC device? Also, I also want to know that, you know, on the TDC, kids under 12 ride for free. They need to do this everywhere in the GTHA, not just TDC, like Brampton, Mississauga, York, Durham. They should allow kids under 12 to ride for free, not just TDC, but all the GTHA transit authorities in the future. Okay. And that's what I like to look at. And also, with the new time-based transit coming to TDC, thirdly, I would like to see a single fare for all GTHA transit companies, the local ones, under 2 hours, and they shouldn't have to pay another fare each time they cross a border. And all the Presto-enabled municipalities should have a 2-hour transfer that's free for all the transit agencies in the GTHA. Can you answer this?
Yeah, we can.
Thank you.
We can. Just help us again. We're going to try and, it's a long question, so we're going to try and break it up in bits and then take it from there. Would you like to
So I'll first take the one about the machines that are on the streetcars.
Yeah.
So those are owned by Metrolinx. We're working with the TTC because you're right, we have on the new streetcars that are rolling out, put in some new pieces of equipment. We're working in partnership with the TTC because the ones that had originally been rolled out that are still there haven't been, quite frankly, up to the performance levels we've wanted. And so we're working kind of on an interim solution to get a new device in there for the streetcars that are rolling out off of the production line. But I want to caution that we're working on what the end state solution should be, because you are right also that we're currently kind of in a mixed mode where some of the machines are supporting debit and credit and other ones are just coins and tokens. And I think actually it brings into a bigger question, which is a bit of a segue into the last two parts of your question, which were about fare policy. So TTC is currently thinking about the future of what it wants in terms of what it supports on surface vehicles. So, you know, on a bus, you can't pay with a credit card or debit, whereas these old machines, or the first version of the machines on the new streetcars, did allow for that. So we're already in kind of a mixed up mode, and so we're working with the TTC to figure out what they want as a long-term solution on streetcars, which may be yet again something different.
So what should people do if they have a credit debit card if they see those different big red machines in the new streetcars and the 4x7s? They need to put a notice on the TTC's website about this.
Sure, I'll make that suggestion. Perfect.
Thanks. So can I pick up on your two questions on the fare integration, which is, and or common fare policy. So the idea of the TTC having children under 12 travel for free comes with a choice that a transit agency has to make and a transit operator has to make, and that is if they let some part of their community travel for free, what's the benefit of that in terms of more people or more families traveling? And this is where sort of fare policy becomes really important. Currently, fare policy is the ownership of each of the transit operators themselves. Until we've got a common fare policy which defines what all of us want to do, then we'll be in a better place to have the same products that are sort of recognizable across the whole of the GTHA. And so your basic question about people need to do, or the different transit operators need to do the same, is very good. It's a very good philosophical point. And this is what we want to do as well. So just broadly, we are going to trial that on the Barrie line starting from the end of this month.
So what's that you're talking about? Just to recap.
So sorry, say that again?
What are you doing on the Bear line at the end of, this is April 30th. It's
Yes.
April 30th. You're talking about
It
this
started already, hasn't it? So we are implementing it from, was it the 26th? Did we start on the 26th of April? We've started it already. So on the Barrie line, we have a offer now that children under 12 can travel for free. And we're going to monitor what the benefit of that is. Because you see, as we give some journeys away for free now, in effect, we'd like to see what is the growth in footfall of families traveling, to see to what extent the business case holds for that to offset the revenue we lose by giving some tickets away for free. Your broader point, though, is exactly right. If you want to create fare integration across the whole of GTHA, you need to have a similar approach for children under 12 across all of the different transit operators. And getting to full fare integration will require us to get the other 11 operators all together in a room and make sure everyone's on the same page. On your second point about having the time-based transfer, the 2-hour time-based transfer, that's an interesting one, because that's sort of very particular to the type of service that you provide within a city and that we have within the city. But it fits the same answer that I've just given you on each of the transit operators. If Ottawa wants to do something like that, it'll be their choice. If Mississauga wants to do something like that with their transit solutions, it is their choice whether they want to do that. And I think it's really important to make that distinction, is that it's not one place where this is legislated currently and then enforced for everyone thereafter.
If I could just add on the free transfers, though, many of the municipalities, and in particular in the 905, all have bilateral agreements between adjoining municipalities. And so, in fact, if you were to get on a bus, for instance, in Brampton and go into Mississauga, that would count as a free transfer. So there are many already in place, and I think it's your point. It's just having that consistent across the region.
Include Toronto as well, include into the program. That's what I like to ask for.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to the next question.
Next question, thank you.
Yes. Good evening. My name is Brendan Reid. I live in the city. I live in Toronto. The past few questions and your answers have given quite a lot of food for thought. First, on the question of the Stouffville line, I reverse commute from Young Eglinton to Markham Village. I see all the plans looking at the expanded GO service stopping at Unionville, but not going any further north. What type of service improvements are planned, or how are you going to plan to serve for those of us who are reverse commuting farther into Markham? That's my first question.
Yes. So
Would you like me to take that, or are you gonna...
you go with it first.
Okay. Don't mean to cut you off. So it's a good question. I think when we looked at two-way all-day GO on the Stouffville line, there was some work done through Markham where there's actually a lot of constraints in Markham to the corridor through kind of the old part of Markham. So the amount of work that's done and the attention to detail that needs to be paid through that section of Markham was considered significant enough that it wasn't included in the current RER program. So what you're going to see on that corridor is that you're going to have 15-minute or better up to some of the smart track stations is going to be 6 to 10 minutes in the peak along that corridor. It will stop at Unionville. Up to Stouffville station, you're going to have half-hour service or better in the peak. So you're looking at some headways that are around 20 minutes. And then you're going to be looking at half-hour service, I think, in the off-peak as well. I can confirm that. But there is that constraint through Markham, and that's why the hard stop at Unionville.
So would that be
Can I
20? Would
just
that be
add to
20 minutes in one-way direction or in reverse as
Two
well?
ways. So that is all day two-way.
That'd be all day too.
Correct.
So in other words, I'd be able to wait every 20 minutes to my job in Markham. Okay. Second question dealing with infrastructure. Very good point on the you mentioned about the public-private partnership. I had lived in Vancouver for a while, saw the Canada Line being built. Given the fact that we all live in Toronto, love subways, but subways are extremely expensive. Has there been any look at the use of elevated construction for the Bloor Danforth extension, Shepherd expansion? I've seen the elevated lines in Vancouver and in other cities seem to be quite well. Any examination of going elevated for future construction?
Yes, so I'll answer that one. I just want to come back to the Stouffville line, just shortly and briefly. But when we consider flows between 2 points within the city, we go through a process to look at what are the feasible options in terms of how to achieve that flow. We don't decide that it is an LRT and then say it is an LRT and it is therefore like this, or it is a subway. We don't start off by deciding it's a subway. We look at all of the options. And where you have congested areas, and if you look at, even though it's not a classic elevated sort of guideway solution, but if you look at Up Express, it's elevated bridge structure, final destination into Union Pearson. So within reason, you need to look at what solution fits the requirement. So to answer your question, therefore, yes, any option to get the movement that you require in a congested space that would say elevation is the only way to do it is part of the consideration.
So have you taken a look at the elevated option for extending the Bloor Danforth and for the Shepherd line?
I can't answer that truthfully. Okay. I just don't know. So
We can get you that information.
we can
though.
get you that.
Sure.
I can't answer you on the spot here.
Okay. And last question, given
Can we,
okay.
yeah, I'm trying to get things moving here.
Yeah.
If you'd like to stay at the end, we can answer any more questions if you've got, or submit them online. Great, thanks. I'm going to go quickly to a question that's coming through us to the live stream, and it was our top 10 questions, and then I'm going to focus folks after this on making sure we get through the people in line, so thank you. So this was our top question, the number 4 question. Toronto's it deals with Toronto's relief line serviced with GO trains, and it's coming from Leo. Has Metrolinx ever considered the mode of the relief line to be GO trains? A GO tunnel would have stations much closer to where people work and provide much needed relief for Union Station. The GO tunnel would also follow the existing planned route for the relief line south and the general routing of the relief line north to connect with the Richmond Hill GO line, avoiding the Don Valley altogether and removing the need for flood protection, thereby solving 2 problems with 1 solution. This results in a second north-south GO corridor in addition to the Barrie corridor that will provide relief to the TTC's Line 1. Is this, Aaron, you're going to answer this one? So Aaron Mraz is our acting director, acting vice president of planning and development.
Great, thank you. So this is a really great question, and I think it touches on how thoughtful a lot of the questions we get can be, because right now we're currently out this evening, I think, we actually have public consultations underway with the City of Toronto about what we call the Northern or Relief Line North portion. And through that, there's 7 different alignments that are being considered, and actually one of them does follow the Richmond Hill corridor and alignment. So what I would say is different is that right now that isn't being considered necessarily as a tunnel, though to Phil's earlier point, there will be some options that are looked at if that alignment is successful, or whichever alignment is successful. But in terms of the southern portion of the relief line, that is currently planned to connect with the subway. And I think where we look at the mode and which mode is best in terms of delivering relief to the Yonge line, we consider what specifically will be the most direct in terms of relieving the pressure along or relieving the pressure that is felt on the Yonge line. So in this case, the city has approved and we are moving forward with, in an environmental assessment process, the southern portion of the line, and that is following a Queen Street alignment, and we're making good progress on it.
Great, thanks, Aaron. Phil, anything to add?
No, that's fine. Great answer, Aaron. Thanks.
Sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I wanted to focus my question on the development side when you're looking at new stations. Like, I think that now that we have the opportunity here to be looking at density, especially when increasing density would therefore make it more affordable and make it more economical to be increasing transit. I was wondering, when it came to developing new stations and also looking at renovating existing stations, whether there was any thought or plans to be partnering with the city and partnering with other transit agencies to be able to build on top of stations or be able to increase density closer to these transit hubs.
It's a superb question, and the answer. So let's take it in phases, and Aaron, you may want to just jump in on that later on as well. So you're absolutely right. When one looks at a station, typically the catchment area is defined on proximity to a station, and the closer people live to a station or work to a station, the more likely it'll be used. It's that first mile, last mile type of discussion. And at the same time, the density, therefore, that we can collaborate with local municipalities and local authorities on to create within that catchment area, the higher that density, the more of a sure thing it is that we are going to get people to either use, travel from or travel to that particular station. So you're 100% right. Density for us is the key for close to stations themselves. So the back end of your question was pointing towards sort of building above stations, which is sort of the transit-oriented development, isn't it? And have you been to Japan?
Yes, I have. I have actually not done Japan, but I went to Hong Kong, and I've seen some of the methods.
Yeah, so Hong Kong is another good example. Yeah, great. So if you've been in Hong Kong, you would have seen the same. Huge developments at stations that are literally owned by the railway. So in Japan, I stayed in what was at that time a 6-star hotel that was owned by JR East, which is Japan Railways East, was on one of their main stations. And so they build into that airspace and they own that type of asset. And they make money from it. They make more, JR East makes more money, I believe. They make more money from their property investments than they make from their railways. And so it is a different business model to where we are currently. And so our focus this year is to take 8 locations to develop that exact transit-oriented development. And Leslie's team, which Erin stands in for tonight, has got that as part of their program. So your question is, which is 100% in that space, and it is one of the things we are focusing on. I think we should do simpler things as well, rather than focus on these big developments that are sort of property developments across stations. I don't think that's a bad idea, but we should actually get some of the basics right, just to provide more retail facilities at stations and some of the amenities that the everyday traveler would avail of. I think that is as important, if not more so, than having transit-oriented developments, and we're doing that now. Erin, would you like to?
I think the only thing that I would add, and that's a great overview, is that a lot of our municipal partners are also in the same space. So there is a lot of activity, I would say, and excitement right now about looking at the opportunities that are out there for transit-oriented development, especially as we have, for the first time, one of the largest new station programs that Go Transit has embarked upon. So it's a good time and a really good question. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Next question. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Yadina, Lakeshore East Corridor, Old Riverdale. I'd like to ask you about construction. Now, initially, again, because our corridor is right beside the tracks, we'd like to know why the construction is being done between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. in the morning.
Well, we need to do construction when we don't have trains on the track. So the evening hours.
Like reschedule some of the trains.
Could Peter just answer, please? And then by all means ask again, but if he just gets his answer to you.
And so that's the time that we have available to do some of the work. At the same time, we're working with the communities along the right-of-way to make sure that we limit the noise in our construction activities. We do noise mitigation in those areas that require noise mitigation, and that we try to be a good citizen in the community that we're in. So it's absolutely essential that we be able to work at night to do track work that's necessary to get our trains to deliver our service to your community. But we try to do that in consultation with the communities in the least disruptive and the least damaging way.
So help me understand, when you're doing construction at night, you put some sort of noise mitigation there, vibration mitigation?
In some cases, we do. We are working with communities where we have upcoming construction to discuss with them what the limitations we put on contractors are. There are some active noise mitigation measures that contractors are required to do, ways of working that they're required to employ to make sure that we're able to have our neighbors sleep in their homes. So yes, that is the case. In some cases, that isn't exactly what's happening, but we are always engaged in a conversation with the community about making sure our work can allow for folks to live in their homes.
To the extent it's possible. I think to the extent it's possible, it's important to say. Some of the work we do at night, I mean, if we have spotlights on the job, it's really important those spotlights are directed so they don't light someone's house up or rooms and things like that. As we can do in practical ways, we want to limit the impact on people that live on the railway. We appreciate that. However, if we have noisy activity, which will always be noisy and which we call vibration, there's very little we can do but do the work that we need to do in that corridor at that point in time. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Ed Cunningham, Keep Transit Public, ATU.
So your first name?
Is Ed.
Ed, pleased to meet you, Ed.
So my question, am I okay for the mic here?
Yeah, you're great.
My question is regarding the maintenance on the crosstown lines, the new crosstown lines that are being built. Questioning the decision to not go with the TDC to maintain those. The first reason being simply that having things under a TDC umbrella gives you access to all the TDC's resources in the case of an emergency. So for example, I believe it was 5 years ago, Union Station was flooded with sewage. Good 6-foot wave of sewage went through Union Station, completely unforeseen. TDC was able to call maintenance personnel from cleaners, structure mechanics, track mechanics, escalator mechanics, fare technicians, everybody in instantly. We had that thing up and running again by, I believe it was 9:30 p.m. that night, and this flood happened, I believe, about 3 in the afternoon. So when you're putting out these requests for proposals, are you taking into account not only what's it like day to day to maintain this, but that emergency preparedness that the TDC has, simply because we can pull from all our subway lines, all our streetcar lines, all those people in an emergency without having to start calling around outside companies. Hi, can you come in? We've got a flood. Hi, can you come in? We've got a major derailment issue. Things along those lines. The rest of it is just that, for example, SNC-Lavalin, I believe, has the maintenance contract on the Eglinton Crosstown for 30 years. So where is the accountability in a 30-year contract if the public says, we don't like the standards this is being maintained to, or the operator, who isn't SNC-Lavalin, says, well, these rails aren't being maintained properly safely. The signal system isn't being maintained up to the standards that we need to operate here. The stations aren't being cleaned up to the standards that our staff need just to exist in them.
You okay?
I would like
Get the gist?
Please, Ed, can you please make sure I get to all of the bits you asked
yes,
there?
yes.
So I'm going to start off with the first bit, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Right. So, when you start off with the challenge on maintenance, is a good one. So let's just go back to this thing about how these P3 contracts work. So by putting out a request with outputs on a P3 contract and say, and by the way, it's not just SNC-Lavalin. You're right, though. SNC-Lavalin is within that consortium with ACS, ACON, and Ellis-Don. So they are all in that CTS Crosslinks consortium. So they are, as a team, accountable for the maintenance. So the reason why you link the maintenance to the build is to get what's called whole life cycle cost. So that you say to the bidder, I want to see the best, most cost-effective solution that lasts for 30 years. So don't even think about putting a lower cost but shorter life product right in the front end when you build it, because somewhere in the process you're going to have to renew that, take it out and replace it with new. You need to put something in that lasts the life cycle. So that is how you get the best value for the taxpayer. And so that's one of the fundamental principles that whoever builds must also maintain. So that's why the TTC is not maintaining. But let me follow to your example of the incident you refer to. So in my experience of how railways work, and I'm convinced it's the same over here, is that should an event like that replay itself, TTC customers are affected, Metrolinx customers are affected in effect, because we will own that asset. I'm sure that those same skills and resources at the TTC will be as available to do the emergency recovery of whatever happens, whether it's another sewage flood or the like. Whatever there is in the spirit of keeping operations going, we do whatever needs to be done to move customers at the end of the day. And so I think there's a natural way that we all look at our collective responsibility to move people across the region, and I think that would always be there. So the latter half of your question, remind me again, what was, it was the accountability issue. So when you think about how these contracts are set up over 30 years, it's not just a 30-year contract, there you go, Ed, can you do the 30-year contract? It doesn't work like that. There are very strict performance measures that is rebated, or a payment is withheld according to a scheme that says, if your quality of performance, if you don't run punctually enough, if you haven't done all of your maintenance, we're keeping this amount of money back. We're not paying you that this month, and that you've lost that. And so there's a very strong incentivization to perform. And so your question on accountability, who's accountable? Well, Metrolinx is accountable. So that is why, and that's why your question is really, really important to clarify, and thanks for asking that. The accountability sits with Metrolinx to contract manage and asset manage that asset over that 30-year life cycle, and to be very cognizant of the fact that what's called the partnership agreement or the contract is enforced and delivered to the letter of the law. And so the performance measures we have in there are the performance measures that are important to customers. So customers will have an opportunity. So your question about who does customers ask and who's accountable? Well, it's very clear, and I know that question always gets asked with people. It's very clear. Public transit is still in public hands. So we're accountable as Metrolinx. We've got performance measures that reflect what customers want. If customers are worried about any aspect of the service they get, they go to our customer care center, they dial in and say, I'm worried that this LRT is now for the 3rd day in a row not running on time. And we take that on board, and we go to the contract and we enforce the contract. So that's the mechanism how it works.
One quick thing on the emergency situation. What this looks like to me now is we are allowing private company to come in, run whatever skeleton crew they need maintenance-wise to maintain, maximum profits while meeting their minimum requirements. And then the TDC, funded by the Toronto taxpayer, is going to come in and bail them out of emergencies so that they're not going to have what we have, which is emergency preparedness, simply by being an organization that can pull from everywhere. But now we're going to come in and bail out this company. It doesn't make sense to me.
Now, Ed, can I just say, please, and it's great, but I have to deal with that follow-up. So can I just deal with that? So you've immediately jumped from what I've said and explained to you how the mechanism works to say there's a skeleton crew and excess profit. No, all of that is quite inappropriate and is the wrong conclusion you've drawn. When we get bids back in from P3 contractors, it actually lists exactly what resources they will apply. We make a benchmarked choice and decision on whether that resources that they apply fits what is required. Plus, there's no opportunity for them to put a skeleton crew in there. because if they don't hit the maintenance requirements, which are very clearly outlined, which is exactly what if TTC would have maintained it, would have been maintained. If they don't achieve what they said they would achieve and what anyone else would have achieved, they are financially penalized. So your scenario and conclusion you've drawn is definitely not accurate. And when you think about how we do this, it all lies in how the contract and the performance measures are defined. I'm going to hold back. I'm going to say hold back. I'm going to stay back afterwards because I think it's justified. I think there are more people that have questions, and I will talk to you as a group, and I'll deal with that in more detail. Is that okay with you?
Thank you.
All right, very good.
Okay, next question, sir.
Stephen McNeil. So much to say and so little time. Couple of key points. Restrictions of bicycles. Greg, you said the bicycles have any excursion. Okay, that's an excursion, and that's a different rule that applies than commuter, right? So you need the coach for that. Why I'm here is specifically accessibility issues regarding the accessibility coach. You yourself have received emails from me in the past. Mary, you too. Okay, your governing body, Ministry of Transportation, has advised me in the past that if I feel that I should file a human rights and an AODA complaint against Metrolinx Transit and Bombardier because you guys aren't following suit with that accessibility coach.
I hear the statement you make. Can you be a little bit more specific?
In which to what?
To what extent we don't comply?
You don't comply because it's very difficult to you only have half a coach on a whole train, and persons with disabilities, the CSAs are not consistent with providing the accessible space for those individuals that need it. Your 4000 series coaches are a misfit because the spring up seat and the headrests, and there's reach problems for some people that don't have the dexterity to do that. And you never vetted it past your accessibility program management team. And another key point is the fact that I have worked closely with Go Transit since 2006. I've been invited to the table a couple of times. I've worked closely with Jan Richards, and I've worked closely with the retired now Sylvain Bernot. Okay.
Can we respond to that? Because I've met with our accessibility team, I've met with our accessibility forum, with external participants. I've not heard of any of these issues you refer to, but it's quite likely.
I've been assaulted
Greg,
times because of it.
So Greg will respond to that. I just want to pick up on one small thing. Accessibility areas with flip-up seats is sort of standard practice, is acceptable practice in many jurisdictions, but that's a small item to your bigger concern, and I would like Greg to just go for that.
So the first one is about, correct me if I'm wrong, is that other able customers are using the accessible coach and not giving up their seats for those
things. And you can't ask them, I understand that.
We actually
Greg answers, please.
So we actually do ask our CSAs to make those verbal announcements on that coach. There is someone in need of a seat. Those who can give it up, please give it up. So I presume you've heard that.
I've scripted it.
Fair enough. So they are stepping up and getting that to happen to the extent they can. They cannot walk down the aisle and point to people and say, move. No, we won't do that. But they are asking people to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what we expect them to do.
Partly the other thing, too, is the impending devices, such as wagons and strollers, when we get to spring break, Christmas, and most affordably, exhibition. And there's failure to communicate except for the day before.
C&E, I think you're talking about for exhibition.
Yes.
So yes, there absolutely are more
of
those.
You're trying to change behavior, and I get that part.
Yeah.
Okay? But you can't change behavior the day before.
So can I just respond to that, and then we need to perhaps move on. So I hear what you're saying, but do you know what? When I'm on our services and I see customers and I see how customers behave on our services, I think if anyone asks any of the customers and say, look, I have a disability, do you mind if I have a chair? I can't think of one customer that just won't get up and say, oh, sure, do that. I mean, so I honestly, I just don't think there'll be that type of difficulty. And we try to condition people through all of our publications. So we're in the same space you're in.
Yeah, but it's the definition of insanity. You keep on doing the same thing and expecting a different result.
So Greg, you'll stay behind if there's any follow-up questions or discussions? Okay, great. Thanks very much. Great. Next, we've got a couple more questions from the audience here, and then I'll take a live stream after the last two in the audience here.
Thank you. You've been waiting very patiently. We appreciate that.
That's fine. My name is Andrew Brown. I actually live downtown. I used to live in the Peel region. I wanted to start it by saying I've been kind of looking and watching from the distance what Metrolinx is doing, and I really do appreciate the work that you guys do. My question is concerning specifically the Kitchener line. A few years ago, Metrolinx, we saw the plans for Regional Express Rail. We saw the plans for 15-minute service, two-way all-day service by 2025. And that's a great program that we're working towards as a region. But my question is the interim. What happens between now and 2025? Previously, there were plans that Metrolinx published for public consumption that said there would be steps towards that ultimate goal of 15-minute service. And my question just pertains to some of the steps that were in that plan but haven't been taken. So we know the original plan called for 15-minute service in the evening, hourly service in the evenings and on weekends for Kitchener. And those improvements haven't been implemented. And I know there's a few issues with implementing that service. So I just wanted to, I guess, hear from you guys what those issues are and what the plans are for implementing that service.
So Greg and myself will share the response, and I'll do the first bit and leave the difficult parts to Greg. So first of all, you're absolutely right. The Kitchener line is probably one of our most valuable opportunities to increase service on, and what makes it even more special is the fact that it presents an opportunity to create better connections between the southwest of Ontario, more the Kitchener itself, the Waterloo region, the airport, and the city centre itself. And so you may have seen in the last couple of months, the last 6 weeks or so, that we've declared a fairly expansive environmental assessment that will look very carefully at how do we connect the Toronto GTAA ground transportation hub, which they need to develop in order to facilitate more connections locally, but also more connections with transit to other smaller regional airports, because they want to take their short-haul flights away from the GTAA, have more long-haul flights come into the GTAA, and therefore grow Pearson from the current 48 million passenger through flow to 100 million through flow. So there's a bigger plan that rail needs to interface with air and also with just local transportation within that area. And so we're very definitely on that trajectory to look at what are the options to get us to a better service. The bit that Greg and his team is working on, and what Greg will talk to you about, is we've set ourselves a target every year to increase our services by 25%. And every year, and that's a big challenge. So if you think of that in 4 years' time, you know, it's like double your services type of thing. And so we need to get to I want us to get to the stage where we are developing custom in parallel to the plans to place contracts and develop the infrastructure and taking it forward. And so Greg will talk you through what our provisional plans are to get services on the Kitchener line as far as we can go without infringing on part of the line that's owned by CN. And now we want to step those services up.
So let me just rewind a little bit. So we own the rail corridor from Union Station to just shy of Bramalea Station. CN owns from there to Georgetown. We own beyond there to Kitchener. So we kind of bookend CN's main line, which is their main line for freight. That's really important to them. We are in discussions with them to create another option, which would free up capacity in that middle section, and that would open up the door to additional service. Until such time as we can land that, and we do have support from the province to advance this work, we need to get CN to agree to this. So I'm not laying it at their feet, but it's a very important conversation for them because strategically they can't give away capacity they feel they don't have. So we're going back and forth on that. That holds great promise to open up more capacity. Until that time, we have increased bus service. That answers an earlier question. What have we added in terms of bus service into the Kitchener-Waterloo area? Because it is a provincially high priority area that we need more service to and from. In fact, it's one of the areas, it's sort of Silicon Valley North, 9,000 people a day go in to work, so it's a reverse commute, and in our world, that's a really important thing. So we've got these conversations going with CN. I can't tell you how they're going to end up, but they're fairly deep conversations, fairly intense, and we're optimistic that something can happen, but that fix won't be in the short term. So part of that conversation is with them, can we have some intermediate improvement in service to at least buy some time? So I'm not giving you an answer that says you're going to get a whole pile of service tomorrow and be happy. Not happening. But we take it very seriously, and the conversations are, I've been in Montreal throughout the last 4 weeks negotiating.
All right, thanks.
Thanks very much for that question. We're going to go back to the online community, and we'll probably just take it, we've got about 3 or 4 minutes left, so we'll probably just take the last couple of questions to the online community. This is coming from Debbie Wiley. Will the availability of parking be reviewed? Currently, the lot at Brampton Go is full by 7 a.m. With the announcement of Ryerson University coming to that space, how will parking be handled?
So, yes, we have reviewed what we're doing with parking. We are looking very carefully at the approximately 23,000 spaces we're adding to the 72,000 spaces we have already. We're very careful to not invest in parking that we won't need in the long run. And just because of the abbreviated time we've got at Ryerson University, there's a whole plan for what the parking looks like going forward. And we can share that with Debbie separately. Maybe we take that away to share that.
Great. Take another question from the online. So this is coming from Andrew D. When will GO Transit integrate with Via Rail and local transit? Most developed cities allow travelers to buy an inexpensive pass that covers all forms of public transportation in a given region, and to purchase single tickets that get one directly between 2 points. In some cases, such as London, this covers multiple organizations, including private corporations. Would Metrolinx consider coordinating with these other bodies, example Via, to create a unified national or at least provincial ticketing structure for public transport?
So happy to respond to that one. We actually started that with Via and GO Transit. We set up an interline revenue sharing agreement with them more than 5 years ago. And Via is very happy with that relationship. They feel that agreement brings them incremental revenue to the point they decided they wanted to do it with Up Express as well. So we set up an interline agreement. So you could actually take Via from Ottawa to Toronto and then with the same ticket jump on Up Express out to Pearson if you needed to. So that exists. We also share Union Station. We've been sharing with Via for decades, if you will. And so that relationship exists already. So we have a lot of respect for Via. They are a national entity. We are a provincial entity. So there won't be a merger of entities very likely. But in terms of level of cooperation, I would say it's very high.
The other part of that question, which is more about an integrated fare solution for the region, we've covered in earlier questions. And if Andrew has any more that he wants to ask about that, then by all means can clarify that.
Great, thank you. So folks, that concludes our management town hall for this evening. As I said at the outset, your feedback and comments about our products and our projects and our services are most welcome. So you can register through metrolinxengage.com and we'll take those as well. We have committed to getting answers to all the questions that have been asked tonight or questions we didn't get to. So we will be posting those online within the next couple of weeks. So before I close it off, Phil, any more parting words?
Thank you very much for attending. It's great to have an opportunity to talk to you all.
Great. Thanks very much and have a good evening. Be safe.
Thank you.